My name is Nicole, and I'm from a small town in Delaware. I never imagined I'd be the kind of person who would have to fight her own family in court. But life has a way of pushing you into corners you never saw coming. Growing up, I was always the quiet one. I wasn't the rebellious child or the star athlete. I was the caretaker, the dependable daughter. When my dad got sick, I put my life on hold, literally. I postponed grad school, moved back in, and became his full-time caregiver while my older sister, Amanda, stayed 2 states away, in her big house, living her best life. At first, I didn't mind. Dad had always been good to me, and I wanted to be there for him. But something shifted after his second stroke. Amanda started calling more often, not to check on Dad, but on me. Every conversation ended with some version of, "Don't forget, Nicole, he's still our father, make sure you don't do anything you'll regret later." It felt strange, like she was laying the groundwork for something. I brushed it off. I was too exhausted to think beyond the next set of pills or physical therapy appointment. For 2 years, I was nurse, cook, therapist, and housekeeper. Amanda visited a total of 3 times, each visit lasting less than a weekend. When Dad passed, I was devastated. It felt like I had lost a part of myself. The funeral was quiet. Amanda flew in with her designer sunglasses and delivered a 10-minute eulogy about how much Dad meant to all of us. I stood in the back, emotionally drained, listening to people I hadn't seen in years compliment Amanda like she was some kind of saint. A week later, we met at the attorney's office for the reading of Dad's will. I hadn't thought much about it, honestly. I assumed everything would be split evenly. But when the lawyer read the terms, my heart stopped. Dad had left everything to Amanda, the house, his savings, even his vintage watch collection. All of it. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I turned to Amanda, stunned, and she just looked back with this mixture of pity and smugness. Then she said, "Nicole, I'm sure Dad knew you didn't need much. You always cared more about doing the right thing than material things. That's who you are." It was the most backhanded, guilt-soaked thing she could have said, and she knew it. I sat there frozen, humiliated. The lawyer kept talking, but I couldn't hear anything after that. Just the pounding of blood in my ears and the slow realization. This wasn't just unfair. It was a betrayal. And I wasn't going to let it slide. I barely remember driving home after that meeting. My hands were shaking the entire time, and I kept hearing Amanda's voice echo in my head. "You always cared more about doing the right thing." It wasn't just a comment. It was her justification for stealing everything and expecting me to thank her for it. That night, I sat alone in Dad's old recliner, still in the house Amanda now legally owned, trying to piece together how this had happened. I had dropped everything for Dad. I bathed him, fed him, cleaned up after him when he couldn't make it to the bathroom. Amanda mailed birthday cards. That was the extent of her contribution. I couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., I got up and started pulling out boxes. Old letters, files, journals. Anything Dad might have left behind that could explain why he'd done this. A small part of me still hoped it was a mistake. Maybe the will was old, maybe there was another version. But I found nothing. The next morning, Amanda called, not to check in on me, but to ask when I planned to move out of her house. Her exact words were, "I know it's hard, but Dad's gone now. We all have to move on. I'll give you a couple weeks to pack up." That's when I snapped. "Are you seriously throwing me out of the house I took care of him in? The house you visited 3 times in 2 years?" I asked. She sighed, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "Nicole, I'm not the bad guy here. Dad made a decision. You know he hated conflict. Maybe he didn't want to hurt your feelings by telling you." That hit me in the gut, because it sounded like something Dad would do, avoid confrontation, even if it meant quietly hurting someone he loved. Amanda was counting on that. She was using his passive nature and my grief against me. Guilt was her favorite weapon, and she wielded it like a scalpel. But what Amanda didn't know was that I had one weapon of my own. I had been journaling everything for the past 2 years. Every doctor visit, every expense I covered, every conversation we had about Dad's wishes, including the one where he explicitly told me he wanted things split fairly, even though he wasn't sure how to write it all down. It wasn't just grief anymore. It was personal. And it was legal. So I made a decision. I scheduled a consultation with a probate attorney. I didn't know if I had a case, but I needed someone to tell me if this level of betrayal could be undone. I needed to know if the law could protect someone like me from someone like Amanda. And as I walked into that law office, I wasn't just Dad's good daughter anymore. I was ready to fight. Walking into the attorney's office that morning, I felt like I was doing something wrong. That's what years of being the good daughter does to you. You internalize guilt even when you're the one being wronged. But the lawyer, Mr. Cohen, was direct, calm, and surprisingly compassionate. After I explained the situation and gave him a binder filled with my notes, photos, receipts, and even text messages between Amanda and me, he leaned back in his chair and said, "This might be more common than you think." Apparently, it wasn't unusual for one sibling to manipulate an aging parent into changing their will, especially when that parent was vulnerable. Dad had suffered 2 strokes. His memory wasn't perfect toward the end. He hated conflict. And Amanda? She was always good at convincing people to give her what she wanted without ever raising her voice. "What you're describing," Mr. Cohen said, "could fall under undue influence. If we can prove Amanda pressured your father when he wasn't of sound mind, there's a chance the will could be challenged." It felt like the first inhale after holding my breath for weeks. But hope turned into a slow burn of anger as I went back over the timeline. I remembered one night in particular. Dad had been agitated, frustrated. He kept saying something about Amanda, pushing him too hard. At the time, I thought he was just tired. Now I wondered if he had been referring to her pressuring him into signing something. I pulled out my old phone and found the video. I had recorded it for myself at the time. Dad in his recliner, his speech a little slurred, saying, "Amanda wants me to change things. I just want peace, Nikki. I don't want to fight with her. Maybe I'll just do what she says." I had completely forgotten about that clip. When I showed it to Mr. Cohen, his eyebrows lifted. "This," he said, "could help a lot, especially if we can find witnesses or any discrepancies in the document signing." That became my mission. I started digging. I remembered the name of the notary Amanda bragged about using, a family friend of hers. I looked up her business and called. The woman was polite but vague, clearly hesitant to talk. But when I asked directly if she'd notarized the will while my dad was home alone, there was a long pause before she muttered, I don't recall the exact details." That was enough to set off alarms in my head. And then, the twist I didn't expect, I found an old voicemail from Amanda, dated just 1 week before Dad passed. She said, "If you're going to be stubborn, then I'll do what I have to. Don't make me be the bad guy here." I had forgotten she even left it, but now, it felt like a smoking gun. This wasn't just sibling rivalry. Amanda had manipulated a sick man, played the guilt card on everyone around her, and tried to spin it like I was being ungrateful. But I had receipts. Literally. And I was done playing her game. It was time to make her play mine. By the law. Filing the petition to contest the will was the hardest and most liberating thing I've ever done. I could almost hear Amanda's voice in my head. "Really, Nicole? You're suing your own sister?" But by then, I had stopped calling her my sister in my thoughts. She had made it clear that blood didn't mean loyalty, and I was done being manipulated. Mr. Cohen filed the paperwork with the probate court in Wilmington. Our case was built around undue influence and lack of capacity. We submitted Dad's medical records, my caregiving log, the video recording of him expressing concern about Amanda, and the voicemail. We even subpoenaed the notary who had witnessed the will signing. I didn't tell Amanda I was filing. She found out a few days later when she was served the papers at her doorstep. She called me within minutes. "Unbelievable," she snapped. "After everything I've done, this is how you repay me?" I stayed calm. "Amanda, all I ever asked for was fairness. This isn't revenge. It's accountability. You're going to drag Dad's name through the mud," she hissed. "He'd be heartbroken." "No," I said quietly. "He'd be disappointed in you." She hung up. And that's when the real war began. Amanda got herself a high-powered attorney from Philadelphia, the kind that costs more per hour than most people make in a week. Suddenly, I started getting calls from extended family, people I hadn't spoken to in years, saying things like, "You really want to tear the family apart over money? Don't let outsiders decide what's right, work it out between sisters." Amanda had done what she always did, played the martyr and painted me as the bitter, greedy one. But I wasn't fighting for money. I was fighting for the truth, and for every daughter who stayed behind while someone else claimed credit and cash. The court scheduled a preliminary hearing. I remember sitting outside the courtroom that day, palms sweating, watching Amanda strut in with full makeup and a designer bag, like she was walking into brunch instead of a legal proceeding. She didn't even glance at me. But what she didn't know was that we had more than just Dad's words. The notary, under oath, admitted she didn't fully verify Dad's mental clarity, that Amanda had rushed the process, and she couldn't confirm that he understood what he was signing. It was a small crack in Amanda's perfectly curated image, but it was enough. After the hearing, Amanda finally approached me. Her tone was softer this time, almost pleading. "Nicole, we can work something out. No one has to lose everything." I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "You already made that decision when you made sure I got nothing." And then I walked away, because I had finally stepped out of her shadow and into the light of truth. The official court date arrived faster than I expected. I sat at the plaintiff's table in my best navy ghoul blazer, hands folded tightly in my lap. It still felt surreal, me in a courtroom, fighting the woman I used to share a bunk bed with. Amanda sat across the room, calm and collected. She wore pearls and that fake smile mask she'd perfected since high school. Her lawyer whispered things to her every few minutes, and she'd nod like she was in control of everything. But control was slipping, and she didn't know it yet. Our case opened with Mr. Cohen presenting everything we had: my caregiving records, Dad's medical documentation, the video clip, and the voicemail. The judge seemed especially focused when Mr. Cohen brought up the timeline, how Dad's mental state declined rapidly in the final months, and how the new will was signed just weeks before he passed. Amanda's attorney countered hard. He claimed that the video was emotional but not legally definitive, and that Dad had always favored Amanda because she was more financially responsible. It was infuriating. Amanda had barely shown up, yet now she was painted as some reliable figure of stability? But then, something happened I hadn't expected. During a recess, a woman approached me outside the courtroom. She looked to be in her early 60s and introduced herself as Patricia Lively. The name rang a bell. "I used to clean your father's house," she said gently, "every Wednesday morning." Amanda never noticed me, but I saw a lot. I blinked, confused. "Why are you telling me this now?" Patricia took a deep breath. "Because I was there the day the will was signed." My heart stopped. She continued, "I was in the kitchen when Amanda came in with a man in a suit. Your father looked confused. He kept asking if this was the paper you'd talked about." Amanda brushed him off, told him to just sign it. I didn't think much of it at the time, but it felt off. I never saw him read anything, just sign. I immediately told Mr. Cohen, and within the hour, Patricia was added to our witness list. Amanda was caught off guard when Patricia took the stand. Her face twisted slightly when she saw her. The cleaning lady, she'd probably never said a word to. But Patricia was calm, articulate, and honest. She didn't embellish. She simply told the truth, that Dad was confused, that Amanda was in control, and that something didn't sit right. It was a turning point. Amanda's lawyer objected, tried to discredit Patricia as just the help, but the judge wasn't having it. You could feel the tension shift in the room. Amanda sat a little straighter, her lips tight. For the first time, she didn't look smug. She looked scared, because the narrative she built so carefully was starting to crack. And in that crack, the truth was shining through. I wasn't just the caregiver anymore. I wasn't the overlooked little sister. I was someone who had the courage to fight. And I was finally being heard. After Patricia's testimony, Amanda's calm exterior started to unravel, but not for long. Her lawyer requested a delay to reassess strategy, which the judge granted for a few days. I thought maybe Amanda would back down. Maybe she'd finally accept accountability. But no. Instead, she came back swinging. On the next hearing day, her lawyer presented what they called new evidence, a handwritten letter allegedly from my father dated 3 days before the will was signed. It was addressed to Amanda and read like a declaration of love and trust. "Dear Amanda," it said, "I've thought long and hard about this. Nicole has always been kind, but I trust you to carry on my legacy. I know you'll take care of everything." I felt my stomach drop. It was written in my dad's handwriting. Well, mostly. At first glance it looked real. But something was off. The tone, the phrasing. Dad never called his choices a legacy. That was Amanda's language. I leaned in and whispered to Mr. Cohen, "This doesn't sound like him." He didn't even use words like that. He gave me a slight nod. I had our team analyze the handwriting overnight. We were ready for this. And just like that, Amanda's last card was met with a hammer. Mr. Cohen presented a forensic handwriting analysis report. It showed clear evidence that parts of the letter had been traced, some from older letters my dad had written, others inconsistent in pressure and flow. The expert testified under oath that there was a high probability the letter had been manipulated or forged. Amanda's face went pale. Her lawyer objected, but the damage was done. I could feel the courtroom shifting again. Even the judge raised an eyebrow at Amanda. And then, the moment I'll never forget, the judge turned directly to Amanda and said, "Miss Walker, I strongly advise you to consider your next steps carefully. This court does not look kindly on questionable evidence." Amanda didn't say a word. Her silence was the loudest thing she'd ever given me. We went into recess and I walked outside, trying to breathe. The air felt different, lighter. Not because I had won, not yet, but because, for the first time, the truth wasn't something I had to keep defending. It was standing on its own. Amanda tried to guilt me, manipulate me, and now she was trying to rewrite history. But the thing about the truth, it has weight. It doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be heard. And it finally was. As we walked back into court that morning, the room felt heavier, like everyone knew we were nearing the end. Amanda kept her head down, her usual confidence deflated. Her lawyer barely made eye contact with the judge. I could sense they knew what was coming. But I didn't let myself get too comfortable. I'd learned over the years, especially dealing with Amanda, that nothing was guaranteed. Manipulators don't give up easily. And guilt? It always finds a way to sneak back in if you let it. The judge opened by reviewing the final evidence: the manipulated letter, the notary's statement, and Patricia's in-person testimony. Then came our closing arguments. Mr. Cohen stood up and delivered a statement that hit me right in the chest. "Your Honor, this is not just about inheritance. It's about honoring a man's true intent and the quiet strength of a daughter who did everything right but was left with nothing. Miss Walker did not seek vengeance. She sought justice." Amanda's lawyer followed with a half-hearted plea about respecting the deceased's wishes and avoiding family division, but it landed flat. Too little, too late. Finally, the judge looked directly at me. "Ms. Daniels," he said, "you've shown consistent, credible evidence that raises serious doubt about the integrity of the will in question. Given the circumstances and the clear signs of undue influence, I am ruling in your favor. The current will is void." I blinked. Did I hear that right? The estate will be returned to probate and divided evenly, as per standard intestate succession laws, pending any appeal, which I advise against. Amanda didn't react. She just sat there, frozen. Her lawyer leaned in to whisper something, but she didn't respond. Her face was blank, pale. It was like she'd built this story so well in her head that she never prepared for what would happen if it collapsed. I didn't smile, I didn't gloat, I just exhaled. Deeply, for the first time in what felt like years. After court, Amanda approached me in the hallway. "You think you won?" she said quietly, her voice hollow. "No," I replied. "I think Dad finally got what he wanted. Peace." She didn't say anything else, and I didn't need her to. Later that week, I walked back into the house, our childhood home, for the first time, without fear that someone would tell me I didn't belong there. I touched the banister Dad built with his own hands, the kitchen table he insisted we all eat at, the bookshelf I helped him assemble. I wasn't here to claim revenge. I was here to reclaim my place, not just in the house, but in the story. Because I was never the one who broke this family apart. I was the one who fought to tell the truth. And now everyone finally had to hear it. It's been 6 months since the court ruled in my favor. Sometimes I still wake up expecting another call from Amanda, another attempt to twist the knife or drag me back into her emotional battlefield. But those calls never come anymore. Because she lost control. And I found mine. The estate has been divided fairly now. I didn't take more than what was just. I didn't ask for vengeance, I simply asked to be seen. For the truth to matter more than appearances, more than guilt trips, more than Amanda's polished lies. The house is quiet now, but peaceful. I've kept Dad's recliner, his favorite mug, and the old bookshelf we built together. I donated the rest, gave the walls a fresh coat of paint, and planted flowers out front. Not to erase the past, but to start something new. I still talk to Dad sometimes, in the silence. I tell him about my days, about how I finally enrolled in that master's program I'd postponed for so long, about the quiet nights when I light a candle in his memory, not in grief, but in gratitude. Because losing him taught me something I never expected. That boundaries can be love, that protecting your peace is not selfish, and that sometimes standing up for yourself is the most honoring thing you can do for someone you love. Amanda moved on, or at least pretended to. We haven't spoken since the court's final ruling. I don't know what story she's telling herself now, but I've stopped caring. That's the freedom I never knew I was fighting for. People ask me if I regret taking it to court, if I ever feel guilty. The truth? I felt guilty my whole life. Guilty for speaking up, guilty for wanting more, guilty for noticing the imbalance, for needing fairness, for daring to believe that I deserved something too. But now, I feel whole. Not because I won in court, but because I stopped letting guilt define who I was. This story didn't begin with me, but I got to write the ending. And I made sure it was one worth remembering.